Signore e signori, benvenuti in God Love Comics. Per favore, godetevi questa analisi delle pagine di fumetti originali di tre grandi maestri europei, il francese Jean Giraud, l'italiano Milo Manara e lo jugoslavo Enki Bilal. Iscriviti anche per contenuti di fumetti più ponderati. Ora per favore diamo il benvenuto al nostro ospite, leggendario critico ed editore di The Comics Interpreter, Satanico.
Hey, Satanico here once again for God Loves Comics, and this is Original Artefacts Episode 6, taking a much closer look at original comics art from all over the world. In this episode alone, we have artists from France, Italy, and Yugoslavia, so let's start big. And by the way, subscribe while we're at it. Thank you. So first up, we have Jean Giraud, aka MOEBIUS. You may have heard of him. He made his name in bande dessinée with his ludicrously accomplished art and storytelling on the Western Blueberry with writer Jean-Michel Charlier. Europeans have always been obsessed with wide open spaces and manifest destiny of the American West, and thus Western-themed comics and films continued to thrive there long after the bloom was off the rose, or tumbleweed, as it were, in America itself. Examples range from Hugo Pratt's Sergeant Kirk to Herman's Comanche, right up to Christophe Blaine's Kurtzman-esque Gus. As a result, Blueberry takes its inspiration not only from classic Hollywood westerns, but predictably from Sergio Leone's spaghetti westerns flowing over from the Italian Alps. Looking at this page, I'm struck by how perfectly it would have fit on the docket of EC Comics and its own stable of brilliant artists. Indeed, I can see some Jack Davis and Harvey Kurtzman as well in Giraud's expressive characters and textures. Still, Giraud's Blueberry is much more detailed and fidgety than the breezy, almost supernatural facility and economy of his later, more recognized approach on science fiction serialized and metal hurlant, which would make him globally famous. It's also quite likely that Blueberry unfolded prior to Giraud's experience with hallucinogenic mushrooms, of which he has said gave him such visions that he subsequently spent his entire career processing a single experience. That explains a lot. First, let's have a quick read-through of the French dialogue, thanks to God Loves Translations. In panel 1, we see the charger, that means load. In panel 2, it says, to storm, Atalanta, boaters, load Mitral and point to the bell tower. Panel 3, here they are, hey, Red, Jimmy, firing. Panel 4, lighted wick, son, hold on, Jimmy, the beast should not leave before Mike's signal. Ready, Doc? Sure, I'm ready, but this is worth more than $1,000, friend. Panel 5, but at the same time. Panel 6, damn it. Panel 7, charge, men. Panel 8, Red, Mac, ahead. Okay. If you're unfamiliar with Blueberry as compared to Moebius' science fiction work, the first thing you will notice is the unusual amount of detail and texturing. It's not that Moebius eschewed these elements later in his career, but his page layouts typically looked much more open and airy by comparison. The second thing you may notice, which is processed more subconsciously, is how even so early in his career, Moebius expertly changes camera angles as needed, from the tight zoom of the first panel to the cluttered wide angle to include the entire gang in panel 2, to the overhead perspective shot in the vertical third panel. However, I would say a little more spotting of blacks across the entire page would be helpful in delineating both the characters and the ramshackle of cannons, TNT barrels, etc., but maybe that is remedied by the colored page. Nevertheless, there is beautiful symmetry between the potent blacks of the Chargé and the Boom FX in panel 1 and panel 5 respectively. Panel 4 is again a little muddled with the way the characters blend into one another, but it's hard not to love the quizzical look upon the face of the pot-bellied old man at the bottom left of the panel. Panel 6 is something of a relief to the eyes as there are no figures to sort out, but rather a simple cannon with almost impressionistic billows of smoke, making it look distinctly like a Harvey Kurtzman Two-Fisted Tales panel. Finally, across the bottom 3 panels, Giraud sandwiches a medium shot of the invading bandits between 2 reasonably similar close-ups of Blueberry under duress from the cannon's explosions pummeling the fortress. All in all, it's an exciting page to look at with flawless storytelling by Giraud that is surely exciting to ink junkies who may even prefer his early collaboration with writer Charlier to Moebius's more languid solo work. But for all of Blueberry's facility, it does lack the magical ambiguity and expansive sense of wonder inherent in the works that changed Jean Giraud into Moebius, from a great French comics artist into a global artistic phenomenon. Next up we have Milo Manara, an artist whose reputation precedes him, and it just occurred to me that as I was going to mention the furor over his infamous Spider-Woman variant that Marvel, at the cusp of its rising wokeness, pulled and begged forgiveness for, I actually used that exact same cover as an example in my Sexuality of Saga essay, which resulted in my entire channel being deleted until it was restored in July. Likely it wasn't because of that suggestive but fully clothed Spider-Woman, and rather for the copious, albeit cartoonish nudity of Saga. But nevertheless, the Manara image does seem a bad omen at times. On the GLC Facebook page, while I don't post Manara very often, I have coined the phrase Manara mouth, because Manara effectively innovated the technique of drawing women's mouths open as if they are filleting someone, even when they are alone in the panel. He does it for his own work in Butterscotch and also for his less-known X-Women venture, also for Marvel, where he draws the female mutants as if they were blow-up dolls at a slumber party pillow fight. I say all this because Lo Semioto is quite atypical of the work Manara would become famous for, much like Moebius on Blueberry. Lo Semioto, translated as the Little Monkey, is based on a 16th century Chinese text and adapted by Manara and musician-writer Silverio Pisu. In this first panel, the immediate thought is, this must have been influenced by Will Eisner. Indeed, the text from Christie's Auction House states, quote, "Note on this historical page the elegant tribute to the titles of Will Eisner on the Spirit," unquote. It is a great title page with Manara expertly integrating a full figure of his lead character atop the letters, and then also playfully inserting his face in any orifices, which Manara knows a lot about, you know what I'm saying. A saving grace of Manara's work that perhaps repels much criticism, as he has always shown a flair for humor and whimsy. Thus his ape sticking out his tongue through the O in the foreground is an excellent example. Also worth noting that where lesser artists struggle with hands, Manara draws an ape's hands beautifully and also succeeds with the opposable toes on its feet. Surely he kept ample reference at hand until he mastered this. Scrolling down to panel 2, also a panoramic horizontal image, Manara emulates a pastoral Edo-era woodprint complete with the tiny arch bridge, but in his own style. The only hint of Manara's typical sexual proclivities comes via the large egg protruding from the labial opening in the rock formation. Or is that a tree trunk? If you look very closely, there is even a little female button at the apex of the opening which tells you all you need to know about Manara's playfully lascivious intent. Breaking the border of the bottom of the panel, Manara's ape is now seen in all his glory in a simple, boldly patterned yukata. The panel has clearly been pasted in, as you can see the cut board, as well as the browning flecks of glue. The final panel shows the ape finishing his crushing of the eggs with a flourish and a grand pose. Manara again does a fine job with the hands and feet, undermining the ape's attempt at being graceful with the awkward positioning of his limbs. But the impact is a bit lackluster, and assuming this is an egg, Manara instead draws it more like a cracked nut with a shell as thick as concrete and no oozing yolk inside. Regardless, Manara shows that he is much more than simply an immensely skilled TNA artist. In pursuing that, he was merely following his own obsessions, and very fruitful obsessions indeed. Lastly, we have Enki Bilal. Born in Belgrade, but whose career was made in France, Bilal is one of those artists I've always taken note of because of his intriguing and skillful work, and yet one of whom I've read precious little. But Bilal's original artwork from this period in 1980, when his famous Nikopol trilogy was being serialized by Dargaud, is especially prized because Bilal was actually coloring his own work. And prior to computer coloring, that means the originals, like this early page from 1980, are in color. We see Bilal's muted yet beautiful color schemes, which somehow look totally unique to him, of grays, whites, mustard browns, and the all-encompassing bluish hues. Also, this is apparently a, quote, crucial moment in the Nikopol trilogy when the god Horus is about to take possession of the body of Alcide Nikopol, unquote. This is also an excellent time to take a look at Bilal's work, given that the trilogy started over 40 years ago and is set in the year 2023. Not to mention that Nikopol is an actual city in the currently besieged country of Ukraine, Slava Ukraine. Now, once again, let's open God Loves Translations and see just what's being said here. Panel 1, the goddess Bastet. The desertion of Horus worries me. His silence is not normal. He must be up to something. The god Anubis. That's also my opinion, Bastet Sheri. This madman will certainly dearly dethrone me or harm me in one way or another. Let's be vigilant and everything will be fine. Failure. Red, it's up to you. Panel 2, Nikopol. Shit! Panel 4, I've never been able to walk with that damn leg. Too heavy for human muscles. Panel 5, Horus. You will walk, Alcide Nikopol, and even better than before, as soon as I have taken possession of your body and your brain, because I have a vengeance to accomplish. Arise, my privileged instrument. The time has come to dematerialize myself and merge into you. Nikopol. Melt into me? Are you kidding or what? Panel 6. No, Horus dear Canopoulos, paranoid and vindictive god, was not joking. Strong in disproportion of his powers and his ambition, he was about to unleash a particularly confusing process of revenge. Nikopol. Sky! So starting off with panel 1, lounging nude in what appears to be a tar pit, the feline goddess Bastet consorts with jackal-headed Anubis. It is interesting how Bilal seeks to articulate his Egyptian gods as if they were pieced together as spare parts, like marionettes or Frankensteinian creations. The articulation lines are not merely at joints, but across random fragments of arms and legs, torsos, etc. Bilal's choice of Egyptian flesh tone is a strange and very successful tan with violet and gray undertones that lend complexity and a sense of undead immortality to their appearance. This stands in clear contrast to Nikopol himself, who is ginger-haired, white European, but whose flesh tone is again lent complexity by gray undertones. Watching Bilal draw, he apparently pencils the work and then adds whites and grays via colored pencils before inking lines with a pen and adding stronger colors via paint and more colored pencils as needed. The process seems unique to Bilal, which explains why his work and color palette stands out from a crowded field of talented bande dessinée artists. Across the next 3 panels, Bilal's titular protagonist, Nikopol, burdened by the right leg of an Egyptian god that is too heavy for his human thigh to maneuver, topples into what looks like a pedestrian subway for monks. Their red robes and hoods provide the page with its only splashes of non-neutral colors, along with Nikopol's bloody head wound. It's simple and effective storytelling, as the first 2 panels show the fall, while the third uses dialogue to explain causation. The horizontal 5th panel shows a hulking figure looming over Nikopol, and it would appear almost as a hooded executioner unless you knew it was the hawk-headed god Horus, who serves as Bilal's other pseudo-protagonist. Taken as a whole, Bilal's palette lends an otherworldly coolness to his page, and he shows admirable restraint both in coloring and detail, giving a clear vision of his futuristic dystopia populated by scheming ancient gods, but without ever muddying it with unnecessary lines. And that's it for the long gestating 6th episode of Original Artifacts. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and please leave a like so this tiny comics channel can climb up from the primordial ooze of YouTube's algorithms. Finally, check out the vast cornucopia of other comics content on the channel, including readings, snippets of interviews, with an enormous breadth of cartoonist and mangaka, essays, comics hauls, artist tributes. Share the videos, spread the word. Thanks so much. See you next time on God Loves Comics.
Et voilà. Ok.
C'est une espèce d'autoportrait, mais ça me permettait de me détendre lorsque j'étais soit en mal d'inspiration, soit pas en forme. Parce qu'il faut être en forme pour dessiner, pour peindre. Donc la caméra me permettait d'accompagner ces moments. Ici, moment important et très 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 jouissif, qui est celui de la touche finale, avec précisément ce pastel gras qui permet de donner une énergie au dessin, d'enlever le côté dessin au trait qui m'ennuie depuis pas mal de temps et que je remplace par du travail de matière, de peinture, avec des gestes sans doute plus énergiques. C'est plus le bras qui travaille et moins le poignet. L'album touche à sa fin et en même temps se profile une proposition de faire vivre ce type d'image sur grand écran, d'en faire un film, d'utiliser les nouvelles technologies. Chose très éloignée évidemment du travail de dessinateur, de peintre, un travail artisanal presque. Je me pose des questions en finissant l'album. Confier des images comme ça à des infographistes, est-ce nécessaire? Est-ce utile? Est-ce passionnant? Je pense que oui. Je pense que je vais dire oui à cette aventure cinématographique. Il faudra revoir le langage, se poser la question de l'adaptation. Est-elle nécessaire ou faut-il prendre des libertés? Là aussi, je pense qu'il faut prendre beaucoup de libertés. Ce sont deux langages différents finalement, même si beaucoup de choses les rapprochent, même si beaucoup de choses